MAVAKAGA.
Ever heard about a 10-year-old girl being abandoned at a Taoist temple?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. This is Chen Yang's story.
Okay.
We're going to try to unpack it today using a news report from the Beijing News
Okay.
and an account from a woman named Li, who's part of the children's charity that ended up helping Chen Yang.
So where do we even begin with a story like that?
Well, I think it's important to understand that this happened back in 2016
Right.
at the Guangdong temple. But Chen Yang's story, it really starts years before that.
Before she was even left at the temple.
Exactly. Her parents, they were separated, never officially married.
Okay.
And that's a big deal in China because it meant Chen Yang didn't have a hukou.
A hukou, that's like their household registration, right?
Yeah, and it's essential for accessing pretty much any kind of services there.
Wow. So without a hukou, you're basically...
Invisible.
Yeah.
Education, healthcare, even basic necessities, it all becomes incredibly difficult.
I see. So already you can see how Chen Yang was facing an uphill battle.
Right. And it just gets more complicated from there. Her father actually tried to place her in a welfare institution.
Makes sense. He probably felt overwhelmed.
Exactly. But they wouldn't take her because of the hukou issue.
Oh, wow. So what did he do?
That's when he took her to the Guangdong temple.
The temple, like a religious institution.
Yeah. It's almost like he was saying, I'm giving her to Buddha.
That's a pretty desperate move.
He did promise to support her financially, but that never happened.
Of course not. So the temple is left with this child. And what? They're supposed to know how to care for her?
Well, the temple staff, they did what they could.
Like what kind of care are we talking about?
The news report mentions things like oval compresses, acupuncture, traditional remedies.
Right. But how effective could those really be for, we don't even know what kind of conditions she had at this point, right?
Right. And that's another layer to this. When Chen Yang arrived at the temple, she already looked different. It's like her health issues were pretty evident right from the start.
So the temple was already in over their heads.
It seems that way. And this is where things start to turn around, actually.
How so?
A woman named Li, who we mentioned earlier, she's part of this children's charity.
Okay.
She and her colleagues, they saw videos of Chen Yang online.
Online?
Yeah, and knew they had to do something.
Wow.
So they traveled to this remote temple, raised funds, and started sharing Chen Yang's story online themselves.
And that got more attention focused on her situation.
Exactly. And that online attention, that's what finally got the local government involved.
Okay.
Chen Yang was hospitalized, and they finally made contact with her father.
It's amazing what the power of social media can do sometimes.
It really is. And once Chen Yang was in the hospital, that's when they were really able to assess her medical issues.
And what did they find?
She was diagnosed with something called osteopetrosis.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's also known as marble bone disease.
Marble bone disease. What does that even mean?
Basically, it means her bones were incredibly dense, like marble.
Wow. That sounds incredibly painful.
And it makes the bones brittle, prone to fractures. On top of that, she had severe anemia, malnutrition, hydrocephalus.
Hold on, hydrocephalus? That's...
Fluid buildup in the brain. It
Yeah.
can cause all sorts of problems if it's not treated.
This poor girl. It's just one thing after another.
And we're not even done. She also had abdominal dropsy, which is usually a sign of something else going wrong, often with the liver or kidneys.
It's overwhelming to think about what she must have been going through.
Right. And, it's clear that years of inadequate care had really taken their toll.
Absolutely. It really highlights how important early intervention is, especially for kids with complex medical needs like this.
Absolutely. And, at this point, we have to talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah.
Abandoning a child, it's a crime in China.
Right.
And what her father did, it raises a lot of ethical and legal questions.
No kidding. I get that he's probably desperate, but there's no excuse for abandoning a child like that.
In the temple, they were trying to help, but they clearly weren't equipped for this kind of responsibility.
This whole case really exposes some major cracks in the system. The lack of support for single parents, the challenges of navigating life without a hukou,
Yeah.
and the fact that the social safety net just completely failed to catch Chen Yang.
It's a lot to process, but there is some good news.
Oh, good. I need some of that right now.
Chen Yang, she now has a hukou.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that opens doors to education, healthcare.
It's a huge step in the right direction.
It is, but, her journey is far from over.
Of course. She still needs ongoing care.
Right, and her prognosis is still uncertain. But Lee and the charity, they're still there, advocating for her.
That's good to hear. It's a reminder that even in the face of these huge systemic problems, there are people who care.
Absolutely. And, what strikes me about Chen Yang's story is that it really is a call to action.
What do you mean?
It makes you think about how we, as a global community, how can we do better for vulnerable children?
Yeah.
What would it take to create a safety net that actually catches those who fall through the cracks?
Those are tough questions.
They are, but they're questions worth pondering for all of us.
Absolutely.
MAVAKAGA.